Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Parenting Hour. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5 here in Birmingham and 105.1 if you're listening to it down towards London and the London area and the rest of the Midlands area. Welcome to this evening's show. We're very happy to be with you this evening. We are recording this today for you, so it's a very live recording just before it goes live out on air with two wonderful experts. And we're going to be talking about hyperemesis gravidarum, and they're going to actually explain what does that mean in a few minutes. But if you're pregnant and have vomiting issues or have difficulties with food, you probably understand the terminology already. And we do want more people to understand this terminology because it's been a little bit of a while since we've had Margaret and Chaz on the show previously talking about this, talking about the new ways, the new drugs that are there, which are not new anymore, but how to help people that are suffering in this at this stage of their pregnancy with this condition. And we want you as listeners to please take these messages and to tell other people about it, your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, over conversations, as we're all in lockdown still, but having those telephone conversations, having those Zoom conversations to get those messages out there to be able to help and support people that are pregnant and are suffering and may not have heard about treatments, the latest treatments. So as I said, we've got two experts with us that are here with me live in front of me, which is wonderful. Margaret O'Hara and Chaz Jaffer. Welcome to you both. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on. Margaret and Chaz are actually, both of them are trustees for Pregnancy Sickness Support, and they'll tell you more about that organisation and what it does. And Margaret is also a research developer with University Hospital Birmingham. Chaz is doing a lot of other research and a lot of other work with abuse and violence as well. So I'm sure she'll be able to tell you a lot about her work as well, what they're doing. So I'm going to pass over to them. Welcome to you both. How are you this evening?
Thank you. Very well, thank you.
Good. It's good to see you in front of me indeed, and it's lovely to see your smiles there and to be grateful that we are alive and able to do this show and able to give this information to our audiences. So thank you for giving up your time for doing this this evening. Will we go to Margaret first and explaining a little bit about your background, Margaret, and what you do before we go into the topic?
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us on. I'm by background a physicist and trained as a medical physicist at Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and then I went into various bits of clinical research, and I'm now working as patient and public involvement lead for University Hospital Birmingham, which is essentially about getting the patient voice into clinical research. So I'm based at the R&D department at Queen Elizabeth, and I liaise a lot with patient organisations and members of the public to bring them in so that they can help to shape and design and have a voice in the research that we do.
Wonderful, great, thank you so much. That's really good. And I hope our listeners heard that. Maybe if you're able to put up your microphone a little bit higher, just for me, if possible. And while we go to Chaz, welcome Chaz. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here again. So I'm a trustee of Pregnancy Sickness Support, and I work in my other role. I also work in research. I'm working at the University of Birmingham in the medical school in the risk, abuse and violence team. I'm looking at various topics, but my current topic is around domestic abuse and violence. Other topics I am also looking at topics within hyperemesis that or either it's work related, and also we are looking now at the language used around hyperemesis and how that impacts both the patient and from the health professional side as well. So that's just a brief overview.
Wonderful. It sounds extensive what you do. We may come back to you to do another show around abuse and violence, because we are hearing a lot of evidence coming out now about that incidents happening in our communities, and it would be good actually to do another show around that with some other organisations maybe. So
yes, absolutely.
Okay, with you in the future, great. But let's just talk about this evening's topic. Sorry, Margaret, how are you? We're going to go back to you again to talk about hyperemesis,
Yeah.
and I'm sure the studio will hopefully modify the sound for us. Sometimes it's my internet that goes down, and so I hope it's maybe not my fault indeed, but sometimes it waves up and down like this, and they have to adjust it. When we're talking about hyperemesis, what is hyperemesis? Can we just break that down to layman's terms so people can understand it? Because it sounds, and we've actually condensed it down, hyperemesis, but the full title is even longer.
Yeah, so it's a big Latin name, Hyperemesis gravidarum, but it just literally means lots and lots of sickness in pregnancy. Gravidarum just means in pregnancy. And there isn't really a really strict definition, because obviously a lot of women get nausea and vomiting in pregnancy. And there isn't really a strict definition that says, okay, now you've got hyperemesis and now it's just normal pregnancy sickness. And we don't get too hung up on that, really. It's essentially hyperemesis gravidarum is where the sickness is really affecting your life. You're vomiting a lot. You have difficulty eating to the extent that it's interrupting your life and your ability to do the things you normally do, and also affecting the ability for you to get enough food and drink. And we, at Pregnancy Sickness Support, we're very much about helping women with pregnancy sickness. So we don't say, oh, you're not sick enough, we can't help you. There's none of that. It's if pregnancy sickness is affecting you and it's affecting your life and your ability to do the things you need to do, like look after your children, work and so on, then that's when you need help, and that's when you might want to think about medications and seeking help further from your GP.
And now that we've broken down that, is there a lot of parents, mums, mothers, patients, whatever we like to call them, suffering from that? How many people roughly suffer from this type of sickness?
We think it's around, all the literature, medical scientific literature says between 1% and 3% suffer from hyperemesis, but generally speaking, they're only measuring people in hospital. So these are from hospital records. But actually, we know that there are a lot of women who are really suffering badly, but they're not quite bad enough to have to go to hospital, or maybe they don't even know you can go to hospital, or they just get told to go home and they don't get the help they need. So we reckon there's probably about 10% of pregnancies are badly affected by pregnancy sickness and really need some assistance. So it's higher than you think. And a lot of women will say, well, that sounds like what I had in pregnancy, but nobody ever told me it was hyperemesis, or nobody ever told me you could take medication, or so on. So we think there's an unmet need. We think there are women who are just not getting help, who really could benefit from help and who should be having help.
I suppose especially now in COVID, that people are not wanting to go into hospitals, that people are kind of keep their distance from them. They're a bit more afraid and they may not be coming forward.
Yeah, and really, we think it would be better, generally speaking, the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, which is the specialist group, so these are gynecologists and obstetricians who you would see in hospitals. So they're the specialists in this. The guidelines, which were published a few years ago, they say that you should get help before you get to the point of needing to be in hospital. And GPs can prescribe medications. And a lot of the time, if you take the medications early enough, then you can keep a lid on the illness and stop it progressing. And then you don't even need to go to hospital. So we're always trying to encourage GPs to prescribe at an earlier point. They're often very reluctant because there is quite a taboo around prescribing medication in pregnancy. However, the antiemetics, that's the anti-sickness medications which are prescribed, have a very, very long history of use and are considered to be safe. When you balance the risk, any medication, you balance the risks and benefits, and the benefits are far, far greater than any risks that there might be. So on balance, it's much, much better, both for the mother and the baby, for the mother to be given the medication so that she doesn't get so sick and doesn't need to go to hospital. Because obviously dehydration is not good for anyone. Starvation is not good for mother or baby. And you want to get enough medication to keep you able to eat and drink. And sometimes that means you might need medication as early as 5 or 6 weeks of pregnancy. It's not uncommon. And hyperemesis generally hits pretty early and quite hard. It can often be very sudden. And if women aren't prepared, they don't know what to do. And by the time they seek help, it's already too late, and they already do need to go into hospital for some extra assistance. And what you get in hospital is fluids. So you'll get a drip with a needle in your arm, and they'll put fluids in because you're so severely dehydrated and you just need rapid dehydration. And sometimes they'll put some glucose in the drip to give some energy, and sometimes some vitamins. Very, very important to get thiamine. Thiamine is an essential nutrient for your brain, and you can only store 6 weeks worth of thiamine from what you're eating. So if you're ill for longer than 6 weeks, then after a few weeks, you start being depleted in thiamine. And it's really, really important to get that replaced because you need it for your brain. Otherwise, you can end up with a condition called Wernicke's encephalopathy, which is where your brain swells up. And once it gets to that stage, it can be very dangerous.
Wow. That sounds very, very dangerous for us and very serious. And it's really good that we're getting this message across again. I know it's been a while since we spoke about this, but it just shows how important we need to be constantly getting this message across, because I'm sure there's a lot of parents, especially now, that are not coming forward, that are very afraid, that have heard those messages over years and years and years about tablets and stay away from everything, and are cautious about taking any kind of drug medication.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to take drugs in pregnancy, but sometimes you have to, just because you have this illness. There's nothing you can do about it, and you do need medication to help you get better. And if you wait until you go to hospital, well, they'll just give you the medication in the hospital. They'll give you it in the drip. So you're not saving yourself from having this medication. You're just delaying it. And in fact, you might end up needing it for longer, because if you delay it, you might be sick for longer than you would have been if you had taken it early. So when you have hyperemesis, I mean, really, there's no avoiding the medication. You are going to need it. And it is worth remembering, I don't want to terrify anybody, but it was a fatal condition before modern medicine. Around 10% of women with hyperemesis would die from the condition. They would essentially die of starvation. So it's not something to kind of mess around with. It's not something that you should treat lightly. It really does need treatment. And maybe other people in your life might be feeling a bit worried about that. Your husband, your mother-in-law might be saying, "Oh, but what about medication?" But I mean, really, if you have hyperemesis, you're really past that point where you have a choice in the matter. You've really got to get treatment as soon as you can.
Is it any more common in different ethnic minority groups? You know, we're a couple. COVID has come to mind. Where it affected Pacific minority groups more in illness and in death, unfortunately. Rest in peace, all of people that have passed away from it, but it has affected different minority groups more. How about hyperemesis? Is there any evidence of this? Do you know?
No, not really. We think it's a human disease. It can affect anybody from any walk of life, any ethnicity, any country, any age. But having said that, I think there is a factor in that people from certain ethnic minorities may be less likely to seek help early, and they therefore might end up more likely to be hospitalized. So they sometimes show up in the figures when they look at the statistics, because they generally only look at hospital statistics. It might look as though there are more ethnic minorities there, but we think that's because they are less likely to seek help early, and they're more likely to end up much, much worse and needing to go into hospital. But it's not like COVID, where there seems to be some actual higher risk.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think that if we talk about the Asian community, that they would be in a bigger family network, and the advice coming from their peers and their elders is always going to be to try herbal remedies or well-known remedies that have helped in the past but not suitable for hyperemesis, but they may have helped in pregnancy anyway, to them first before they've approached health professionals. So that's why they could end up being hospitalized, because they were in a condition where they actually needed hospitalization because they didn't seek help early enough, and didn't get to the GP to even ask for antiemetics, or maybe they didn't know that this was even a condition that they needed to ask for antiemetics or to be able to take drugs, or even quite simply that other members in the family had a beautiful pregnancy, as we put it, where they're glowing, everything works perfectly, they're not really vomiting, they're eating well, and then suddenly the person who's suffering from hyperemesis isn't able to eat, and they may even be hiding it because they don't want the family members to know that there is something wrong, or they didn't know there was something wrong, and they just try to cover it up and think that it will go away, but it's hyperemesis and it won't.
Mm. And I'm wondering there maybe also about language difficulties and not able to understand if there's a lot of difficulties there in understanding English or who to contact, and maybe bringing if they're bringing members with them to do translation, that they might be translating it properly, what's going on there and what's happening as well. So, but all of those contribute to people not coming forward early enough.
I'd say so. And even for women whose English is the first language, sometimes report that they just feel like the GP is not hearing them. And they're trying to explain how bad this is, and the GP is saying, oh, it's pregnancy sickness, everyone gets pregnancy sickness, just deal with it. And they're led to believe there's something wrong with them because they can't just deal with it. And I think that exists anyway, but for women from ethnic minorities, perhaps that is even further compounded by actual linguistic difficulties or having it translated to someone else. And I think sometimes women who call our helpline, they find it beneficial to take someone with them to the consultation, a friend or their husband, because when you're sick, I mean, it's just so difficult to speak up for yourself because you feel so awful, and it can help if somebody comes with you. But I think there are issues there around standing up to authority and being seen to contradict a medical professional. And I think that's very, very difficult for people from lots of different socioeconomic backgrounds, and perhaps also compounded by ethnicity as well.
The people that contact your organisations that you're both trustees with, how do they contact you, or how do they know about you?
We've got a website, and we run a helpline and web chat, and we have quite a large social media presence, and we do try to advertise within maternity units and gynae units where women are treated. So we have cards that we ask midwives to give out, but a lot of it is word of mouth, and we do sometimes run media campaigns around certain events. The Duchess of Cambridge was actually really useful for us in terms of advertising and raising awareness. And now people have heard of hyperemesis before she was pregnant. Nobody has ever even heard of it. So that does help. But we're always looking for any midwives or any health professionals who are interested, who can help us to do that, who can download a leaflet and put it on the notice board in the waiting room. Any of that is really helpful, because we don't really have the resources to do, we're not a massive charity who have the resources to do a big poster printing campaign. And so any healthcare professionals or anyone who wants to volunteer, we have 450 peer support volunteers around the country. So we offer peer-to-peer support, which is generally it's done by text message or WhatsApp or so on, because obviously when women are feeling very sick, they're at home, they're stuck in bed, they might not want to speak, they might not be able to speak. So the peer supporters are women like Shaz and I who have had hyperemesis. They know exactly how it feels, and they really feel solidarity with this poor woman who's sick at the moment. And we're always looking for more volunteers. If anybody listening wants to get in touch with us about that. And we try to match peer supporters with the lady who's sick in terms of characteristics. Some women will say, I've had a miscarriage before, I'd really like to talk to someone who knows what that's like, so we'll try and match them on that basis. Or they might say, I'm a teacher and I'd like to be matched with another teacher because I'm finding it difficult with work or whatever. So we try to match people up as far as we can, or it might just be they want to speak to somebody local who's been to a local hospital as well.
And what is available is a lot of advice that that maybe that person who is suffering from hyperemesis hasn't been able to ask somebody else. They can ask the volunteer who's supporting that person. And also during COVID, we have been open, so nothing has closed down. The Pregnancy Sickness Support Forum and Facebook, and also the volunteers and the helpline are open. So if anybody is suffering, that they are encouraged to please call in for advice and any help in that matter.
So we've got 3 employees now, so we've grown quite a bit over the past few years. We had 1 full-time employee, and then we brought on another lady, and just a few months ago actually brought on our 3rd employee. So there are 3 people in the office now, and they are answering the phone and answering the web chat and looking at the online forum, because we have an online forum as well, which is really good for women who might be a little bit shy about speaking to somebody or physically unable, and they just want to have a look and see what other women's experiences are, just to get a feel for what's normal and whether or not what they're experiencing is normal. And that can be done anonymously in the sense that you can use a handle. We do ask for information because sometimes women find themselves in an emergency situation in terms of their health. We have had that before where we've had to call an ambulance to go and visit somebody. So we do ask for some information if we're matching you with a peer supporter, so that if there is an emergency, we know who to call and we can get some help to you. But with the forum, it's a little bit more hands-off. You can just read, so you don't have to write anything. The web chat, again, really good for people that can't really speak because they feel too sick. So you can just do that on your phone and you can get live real information. And we're also involved in research. The staff now are able to, because we've got someone else coming in, able to concentrate on fundraising. As you say, there's a lot of work to be done and we do need to pay people to do it, so we have to fundraise. And also with research, we're really quite heavily involved in international research. We have the patient voice really central to a lot of the work that's being done around the world, a lot of the developments.
I've got the number here. Did you say you wanted it now, or?
Yes, why not? Yes, now. I'm going to later.
It's 024 7638 2020. And the website is pregnancy sickness support, all one word, .org.uk.
It's reflecting much more than actually I thought or other people thought. So if we say people get it from as early as 6 weeks, when would this tend to normally kind of pander away or pander off at the end?
Well, I think it depends on the individual. I mean, it starts as early as 4 weeks in some people, and we know for it to continue throughout the full pregnancy term. So for some people, it doesn't go away without intervention, and intervention being the antiemetics, the anti-sickness medication. The earlier they get it, the better they'll feel, and it will enable the person who's suffering from hyperemesis to be able to eat and drink. Without that, it depends on the person. It may carry on for the full term, or it could sort of start tailing off maybe the last trimester, but it's very individualistic. For me, I suffered all the way through, and I was uncontrollable unless I had antiemetics. And it wasn't just one for me, it was a mix of at least 3 to get me under control. And even then, I was only able to eat by 6 months for one pregnancy, and in another, it wasn't until month 8.
I think some women get remission maybe around halfway through pregnancy. For me, I had antiemetics really early because my mum and sisters had hyperemesis, and I was forewarned. And I did a lot of research beforehand and found out about treatment. So I had quite early treatment, and My symptoms got a lot better from about week 18 to 20, although I needed to take the antiemetics for the entire pregnancy. So I was kind of okay in the second half, but only if I kept taking the tablets. If I stopped taking them, then I would go back to being sick again. But my sisters didn't get early treatment, and they were sick through the whole pregnancy. So I think that really shows the difference between getting early treatment and not getting early treatment. So it is really, really important.
Oh, listeners, we're coming into a commercial break, but I really don't want to stop for this commercial break because this conversation is so interesting, and I'm sure you're finding it so informative as well, that there is medication, treatment, support out there for people that are going through hyperemesis that you may not have come across before, you might never have heard about before. We want you to spread this word, listeners, please, to all your contacts so that you're getting that message out there that there is help and support there. I'm going to come back after this commercial break, and we're going to talk more about hyperemesis and give you some more examples indeed. Our listeners will hold on here while we go into a commercial break. Welcome back to Parenting Hour. You're tuned in to Unity FM 93.5 and 105.1. My name is Kathleen, and we're here this evening talking about hyperemesis. Margaret and Chaz, who are both from the Pregnancy Sickness Support, both are trustees there. And they were talking before the break about the amount of work they do, which actually I was surprised to see because I haven't come across them and looked them up. But they are a great organization and do lots of work and support on a one-to-one with mentor schemes and people that are there trying to help others that have hyperemesis. Before the break, we gave out some numbers, phone numbers, which we'll come back to again, and we'll come back to the website again, because I think all of your listeners need to know of this and need to pass on this information and to understand how many people can be affected from hyperemesis gravidarum, which is about 10%, I think Margaret and Chaz were saying before the break. Is that right?
Yeah, about 10% have really severe pregnancy sickness, which requires help and would benefit from medication.
Which is huge, actually. Do we know anything about the causes of this?
Yeah, recently, just in the past couple of years, actually, there's been some real breakthrough work done by geneticists in the United States. And we're now kind of 99% certain that hyperemesis is caused by a genetic component called GDF15. So GDF15 is the name of a protein which is produced by the placenta. And it's produced very early on and in very high amounts. And we know that there is a receptor for this protein in the part of the brain which causes nausea and vomiting. And that's known from other conditions. There's a condition called cancer cachexia, which is something which a lot of cancer sufferers unfortunately suffer from. And it's because the tumour produces GDF15. And it makes them feel sick. It makes them feel like they don't want to eat and they have no appetite. And often they become really kind of wasted away. You know, they lose a lot of weight and they can't do anything about it. They just don't want to eat. And it's basically the same thing. It's the same protein which is produced. It's also the same thing which makes you sick if you've had food poisoning or if you've done too much exercise. You know, sometimes you see marathon runners, they cross the line and they vomit or they throw up because they've just done too much exercise. Again, it's the same thing. That's GDF15, and it's your body's response to what it sees as damage, tissue damage. So we know that this protein exists, and we know it causes sickness, and it's been found in the placenta. But the key thing for hyperemesis is the genetic work, which shows that there is a mutation on the gene which women with hyperemesis have. So it's that in hyperemesis you have a variant of this gene which overproduces GDF15. It produces far too much of it, and that makes you become far too sick. And the good news here is that eventually that could mean that we could have a cure for it, because if it was possible, and we're speaking to scientists at the moment at Cambridge in endocrinology who believe that it would be possible to create an antibody, so they would be able to create a drug which would block the signal in the brain So even though your placenta would continue to produce it, they would just be able to block your brain from receiving that, and therefore it would remove the symptoms. So it's really exciting because for once, it means that we might have a prospect of an actual cure, something to actually address the cause, rather than at the moment we have antiemetics. So these are drugs which are in general for nausea and vomiting, but they're addressing the symptoms rather than the cause. So they're not all that effective. I mean, they can be effective to varying amounts, but they wouldn't just switch it off. So there's this, of course it won't happen tomorrow, it would take time, but for our daughters potentially there's a prospect of something.
You spoke a lot about different illnesses beforehand. Can you give us some examples of people that have kind of come through, that have come to you, and maybe they've either gone to hospital or they haven't gone to hospital, or you've given them mentors, and they've come through the other side and have come back and told you about their journeys and what they've done and how you've helped them and how they've helped themselves?
Absolutely. I mean, what we find is that through the volunteering and the mentoring, the peer support that we're giving, we have a lot of successful pregnancies, and nearly every single person says that it has been worth it. This comes over and over again, that the struggle that they've gone through, the effort of staying pregnant and just the vomiting and the nausea they've had to endure, by the end of their journey, when they hold their baby, one of the things that they say is that everything was worth it. So we have a lot of successful stories. There are some cases where the sufferer has had hyperemesis with such severity that none of the antiemetics, so we have different lines of anti-sickness medication, the first, second and third line, where the third line is a stronger one, and if none of those work, and if none of those work in combination as well, so it's not just that you take one, that you can take a mixture of them at any one time, maybe 2 or 3 or even 4, and if they don't work, then the top line is steroids. We do know of a case where a particular woman was not responding to any of the anti-sickness drugs and was given steroids and was in hospital care nearly throughout her pregnancy. Now, that was a very, very severe case. Sometimes what happens is that the severity with which a sufferer is in their condition, they just can't cope, and we have had cases where they have terminated the pregnancy. Sometimes what also happens is that a woman might not be diagnosed with hyperemesis, and the GP or the doctors just dismiss it or think that the antiemetics will be enough, and they've gone through their entire pregnancy not having any more help other than a couple of antiemetics, and they've coped through it in that respect. So it is very individualistic. It's very difficult to say. So each case is very individual, and it has to be assessed on a case-by-case basis. But majority of our sufferers come through with a successful pregnancy, and they are happy at the end of it. But they are also wiser. So if they go into it again, they know what they have to do by trying to get help early, trying to get the antiemetics early, and they know where the support system is as well, so they can come back.
Is it more common in first-time pregnancies to later pregnancies?
I'm not sure. It's very, very common to have it again. The biggest risk factor for having hyperemesis is having had a hyperemesis pregnancy. The second risk factor is whether it's in your family, so whether your mother or sister had it. And so I mentioned the genetics link, and I wanted to make the point that this means that you can pass it on to your daughters. My mother had it, and my 2 older sisters and myself have had it. So clearly it's in my family, and we then potentially can pass it on to our daughters. But it doesn't mean that it has to be in your family to begin with, because this mutation on this gene can occur spontaneously. So it can just arise. So for my mother, her mother and sisters didn't have hyperemesis at all. When she had it, they were shocked. They didn't know what was going on. So it can occur spontaneously, but when it's in the family, you have to be aware that you may pass this on to your daughters. Doesn't mean they'll always get it, because there are cases where the mother has it, but not all of the sisters have it. So again, genetics is quite complicated, but you are likely to have it again in your next pregnancy. There are cases where you don't get it again in another pregnancy. There are cases where you don't get it in your first pregnancy, but then you get it in your second and other pregnancies. So it's mixed. But I think the most common pattern is to have it in every pregnancy. And it's something to prepare for. As Shaz said, you're wiser. For me, I was wiser because of my mother and sisters. So I was already preparing for this. And I was already, before I got pregnant, putting support into place, because I knew from their experiences that support's very important. So I think what we advise, we have a pregnancy planning section on our website. So if you are planning another pregnancy, there's a plan there to help you to speak to your GP. And also antiemetics obviously are key to this, but it's also social support. So it's making sure that your family and your friends are ready there to support you, because you need to rest. Rest is absolutely key to getting through this. And if you're going to rest and you already have a baby or a toddler or another child, you're going to need help, and you need the family around you. And you're much more likely to get through it if you have the family taking care of you, taking care of your child, and doing the housework and all the other things that you're not able to do.
Yes, so it's trying to get this message out to people to contact you, to look up this information on your website. It would be actually useful to repeat that website and the phone number again. So the website is Pregnancy Sickness Support. I forgot, is it .org at the end?
That's right, .org.uk. So Pregnancy Sickness Support, all one word, .org.uk.
And the phone number again, Shaz, if you'd like to repeat that.
It's 024 7638 2020.
Wonderful. And there's lots of information there. This information, and when people go for pregnancy, and you were saying the importance of putting it out as a pre-plan, maybe people are not pre-planning that much, but if they're going for their first visit, do they pick up a leaflet like this? Is the midwife they're meeting on their first visit talking about something like this that could happen? Is GPs talking about this? You know, because we don't seem to be talking about it, and I don't know whether people understand that this is 10%. You know, 10% is a huge amount. Of every 100 people, 10 people will get this. This is a lot of women we're talking about, and I don't hear the conversations happening.
I think the problem there is that there's a lot of overlap with the term morning sickness, and hyperemesis is a pregnancy sickness, and it's the severity of nausea and vomiting which lasts throughout pregnancy. Now, initially, if somebody is presenting their symptoms, it gets overlooked at, oh, it's just morning sickness, it'll go away after the first trimester. But the reality is that if it's hyperemesis, it won't. And the way to pick that up is that by week 4, by week 6, the woman is already either severely nauseated or vomiting to the point that she is dehydrated. And that will not happen in morning sickness. Morning sickness, as the term suggests, is that at some point in the day, that woman will be able to eat and drink because the nausea has passed and they can eat and drink. And this is what we think is actually the biggest problem. And this is why we specifically call it pregnancy sickness and not morning sickness. Nearly everyone suffers from morning sickness, and it goes away. And they are, even in fact, during the evening or during the day, they are enabled to eat, but with hyperemesis they are not. This is constant 24 hours round the clock nausea and vomiting, which doesn't go away. They can't eat, they can't drink, not even water. It doesn't stay, and they are constantly vomiting, which is why they end up with with severe conditions, with dehydration, and that's why they need hospitalization and intervention.
And how can we get, besides programs like this, how can we get more information out there for people to understand the differences? What are you doing in your organisation to that kind of get that message out? And how can we support you in that?
We do midwife education, so and healthcare professional education. So we have educational packages that we can do with hospitals or primary care. We work closely with a scientific and medical advisory board of senior obstetricians and gynecologists. We have worked with the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists on guidance. So there is a clinical practice guidance document which was published in 2016. And this is clinical practice guidelines for the management of severe nausea and vomiting of pregnancy and hyperemesis gravidarum. And myself and one of the other trustees, Roger Gadsby, were co-authors on this document. And it's due for update. We are in the process of updating it at the moment. But the advice will stay pretty much the same, you know, early antiemetics and supportive treatment in hospitals. And we do try to promote this document through professional bodies and from women themselves. So when women approach PSS, if they don't already know about the guidelines, we'll send them. And we're also working on a lay version of the guidelines just now, which is in more kind of common language for women themselves to understand what the treatments are. So it's a combination of top down and bottom up, really. So we work with professional associations and healthcare professionals, but we also directly try and feed this up through women themselves by empowering women to have that knowledge and to be able to have a conversation with their GP, because obviously GPs are they're generalists and they can't know everything. Mm-hmm. And the idea is to have a conversation with your GP and say, well, there's this guidance, and if you weren't aware of it, could you read it, please? And could we look at my treatment based on what it says? Some GPs will be more open to that kind of conversation than others, which is part of the challenge. Mm-hmm. But I think it's partly, we partly like to empower women themselves, as well as improve education for healthcare professionals and midwives. We have a healthcare professionals friendly list, so midwives and doctors can refer themselves to us and say, you know, I'm proactive in treating women, you know, put me on your list, so that we can direct women to people who are maybe a bit more knowledgeable about it and a bit more experienced in treating it. But it is difficult. We do try to, we attend conferences, the Association of Early Pregnancy Units, Royal College of Midwives, to try and raise awareness directly with healthcare professionals. But it's a constant job, and we are a small charity, so there's a limit to how much we can do.
I'm just wondering, Kathleen, that what we have also done in pregnancy sickness support is to provide support to specific people from ethnic groups from a background, and we have given support to the Jewish community in London, taking on board what their specific needs are. And I'm wondering whether your viewers from an Asian background or Muslim background, and if they have specific needs, we can have a look at that. Once lockdown ends, we're happy to come and speak to Muslim communities where if they would like to have more information directly from one of us, we're happy to be able to do that. Or both of us, or a team from Pregnancy Sickness Support are willing to do that, to be able to reach the communities that you think would benefit from wider awareness, or even just to be able to have an open space where they can talk about it. Might not be able to talk about it in families, and if there is a place where they can come and talk about this, we'd be happy to be involved in that or come and support it.
Wonderful. I think this is so much needed, and I'm sending out actually information now about, as we're speaking, so for people to tune in and get that information from you as experts, because I don't think it is up or well known. And what comes to my mind is maybe we need to, and I don't know if you do have this already in different languages, but what we have discovered over lockdown is when we're trying to get the message out about a topic, that we record a short message in the different languages on that topic and send it out, that people are because some people are able to understand some English, but maybe not able to read the different languages, but they are able to pick up their own language in a verbal way. So we are recording it and sending it out. So maybe that's something also we could do at some stage, of doing some sort of a little picture with some languages behind it to get that messages out there to people. Yeah, so some ideas that come to mind. Sorry.
Yeah, we do have some leaflets translated in different languages, and if I remember correctly, I think it was we had Urdu translation, and I can't remember complete. Can you, Margaret?
I'm not sure which languages, and I think we are having to update some of our materials, so we're going through a process now of updating. But if we could work with you to do that, for you to tell us which languages do you need, you know, what kind of information do you want. And Shaz mentioned the Jewish group, and for them it was women within that community would not be likely to call us, they would not be likely to approach us directly. So it was a case of upskilling some of the women within that community to provide the same support that we would provide. Because women within their community would be much more comfortable to approach another member of their own community for the information. So we were supporting them to support their own community, and that's something we would be really, really interested to speak to you about.
I think it's one great way of because people do want to support others, especially people that have been through this, that they really would like to help others as well, but maybe unaware of the services you provide, and they may want to volunteer and be one of your peer supporters, which is a wonderful way forward indeed to help. Is there, if people are suffering from this, is there tips that we can give even for pre-pregnancy? Maybe we should start pre-pregnancy and talk a little bit about your plan, and then some tips along the way to help people that are tuned in this evening and how we can further support them.
I think for the pre-planning, speak to PSS if you feel comfortable doing that, or look at the website. Part of it is to identify a GP who you can have a conversation with in advance of pregnancy, just to say, look, this is the kind of thing I would like. Are you willing to prescribe antiemetics? Are you willing to prescribe them early? And if you're not, to try and find another GP who is prepared to be there for you when you need them, because obviously you don't know when you're going to fall pregnant. So there's that. Then there's also to find out what are the local hospital services, because there are different clinics. So within the Birmingham area, at the Women's Hospital, Heartlands Hospital and Good Hope Hospital, there are day clinics. So this is a facility where you can go in the morning, you can drop your kids at school, you can go into the hospital, have fluids and antiemetics through a drip, and be ready by 3 o'clock to go and then pick up your kids. So the service works around the needs of the women who want to use it. If you're still sick and you need to be admitted, then you can be admitted. But the service is designed to work around your life and the things that you need to do in your life. So it's good to know what those services are, and which hospitals have them, and how do you get a referral? Do you need your GP to refer you? Can you refer yourself? Can your midwife do it? You know, these are the crucial pieces of information to have in advance, because when you're sick, it's difficult to try and find that out. So that's the first thing, is about medical services and having that lined up. Then there's your family. So to make sure to find out, okay, which people in your family will be able to take your child, help you with the school run or nursery. Could you maybe increase your nursery hours to have more childcare for your preschooler? Could you have prepare meals to have in the freezer ready for your family so you don't have to cook? And have things lined up. If there were things you were able to eat in your previous pregnancy, could you have these ready so that they're in the cupboard ready for when you need them? Shaz, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that bland foods are better than anything that is overly spicy. It depends. Really, I think mostly what we've heard is that the blandest of foods is what women are able to digest, and just keeping away from smells that trigger nausea and vomiting. I mean, we've heard that even the smell of your husband is enough to throw up. But when I say that, I mean, you know, his deodorant or aftershave.
Yeah.
So keeping away from smells, and if you're able to eat little and drink little as often as possible, if it's possible. It might not be, but having something in your stomach will break the cycle of vomiting and nausea. But it might be that it comes back out, but it's better to have something there to throw up than nothing. And also that what I found was that fizzy drinks, I know it's the most unhealthy, it's the most unhealthiest of food items and drink items that you suddenly find are more digestible. I found that for me, the blandest foods and fizzy drinks helped. And it won't be every single fizzy, it might just be the one that you can stomach.
Which is wonderful. And I'm just looking at the time. We're coming to the end of the show already, would you believe? I don't know where the time has gone to, but I think what I need to say is if people want more information, to go to your website, phone your number. We put up already previously. Unity FM will have it, to contact you and contact their medical profession, their GPs, their midwives, because there is support there, there is help there. And you gave us lots of lovely examples of the medical knowledge that is there now to help people. And with that, I want to thank you both for coming on this evening's show and giving up your time, which is wonderful, to get that message across. Thank you so much indeed. I'm sorry I had to cut you short there. Time goes by on this show so quickly to us, indeed. But listeners, I hope you enjoyed this evening's show. Please pass on this information. It's vital. It affects 10% of our community. So please get the information out there. And there's lots of people there that will help you, lots of professionals, lots of advice. So if you've missed out on anything, contact Unity FM, and we're very happy to pass on either Margaret's or Shad's teaching to you as well, to help you out. And until next week, have a good week, inshallah. Take care of yourself, keep safe, enjoy the lovely weather that we're having.